This is a great day for the American worker and a great day for the American economy. Once again, President Trump is keeping his word. As we look for ways to expand exports from this country, imports to this country, this president is determined that we're going to have free trade, but it's going to be fair trade and arm's length negotiations with nations, holding them accountable to the promises that they make. And the review the president is initiating today and the work of members of this team on the president's behalf will ensure that we put America first when it comes to trade. We put American jobs and American workers first.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you, everybody. You're going to see some very, very strong results very, very quickly. Thank you very much.
Mr. President, today with your tweet, were you trying to tell the Justice Department to grant immunity to Michael Flynn? Were you trying to do that, Mr. President? Was that your intention, Mr. President, sir?
Thank you, President.
Mr. President, was that your intention, Mr. President? Was that your intention, sir?
The climate has truly changed. Political climate, that is, America. Oh, God, shoot me. President Trump signed an executive order nullifying President Obama's climate change efforts. Surprise! Environmental activists hate it. Like Michael Moore, a noted source of flatulence. He tweeted this in between pies. It's so cheap. So cheap. Not worthy of applause. Not worthy of applause. Anyway, he tweeted, historians in the near future will mark today, March 28th, 2017, as the day the extinction of human life on Earth began, thanks to Donald Trump.
Wait a minute. What historians if we're all going to die?
Oh, you did. That's exactly what I was going to say.
Sorry, I didn't mean to.
All right. So wait, historians are exempt from extinction. And then the next line is, I'm becoming an historian. All right.
I'm just hoping we start with Michael Moore.
All right. I'm going to get to now. We got to talk about the former VP and present day thigh chafer Al Gore. He's got a new film, and for a change, it's not in his underpants. It's a sequel to his climate change reel of lies and inconvenient truth. That movie predicted that the planet would be gone in 10 years, yet 11 years later, Gore releases the sequel. So you know who proved Al Gore wrong? Al Gore! Anyway. We happen to have the trailer for this highly anticipated new film.
In a world where no one in the media questioned one man's opinions on global warming, that man now has a sequel. It was just 11 years ago that he said the world would end in 10 years, unless Earth acted on his awesomely ridiculous and punitive proposals. Now he's releasing a second film proving to all that he was wrong, that we are still here, and that he was completely incorrect. Nude man on a nude unicorn riding a skateboard through a ring of fire looking awesome presents Al Gore, Leo DiCaprio, and Dave Matthews as the Turtle. Inconvenient Truth 2. More lies from an irrelevant
So apparently, MLB's opening day is near, and no, MLB doesn't stand for My Little Butt. It's Major League Baseball. And the Washington Nationals invited the president to throw out the first pitch, but he declined because of a scheduling conflict. It's noteworthy because every president since Taft, Steve Taft, with the exception of Jimmy Carter, has thrown out a first pitch at some point during their presidency. So is the president missing an opportunity to unite the country? We sent Tyrus to find out.
Donald Trump, due to schedule conflicts, is not going to throw out the opening day pitch for the Nationals. Do you think that's okay?
That's fine.
But it's baseball.
That's wrong.
The only one who has never done it is Carter. So Donald Trump needs to throw out this pitch.
Absolutely. It's baseball. It's American.
You don't want to get Cartered out in the middle of being a president, correct?
No, not at all.
Because when you think of Carter, you think peanuts and one term, bruh, throw the pitch. Out of this group, who do you assume would be the worst pitch? George Bush, Barack Obama, Ronald Reagan, Donald Trump, 50 Cent, or Geraldo Gutfeld?
I go with Gutfield.
Actually, before his injury, he defected from Cuba, Geraldo Gutfeld, and he actually had a 107-mile fastball. But after his injury, he vowed to never pitch again.
Did you say it was 50 cents?
50 cents. Did I tell you that? Did I tip the game? Yeah, 50 cents threw the absolute worst pitch of all time.
Did it hit somebody in the background or something like
It
that?
did, in fact, hit somebody in the background.
Mascot, wasn't it?
Yeah,
or something?
mascot. There was the fire.
The memory?
Might have been some deaths. Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Bad day for 50 cents.
That's right. If it'd been $1, he might have done better.
Yeah. Who had the best pitch?
The best pitch was probably Bush. Had to be.
100% correct. Look at that delivery.
Okay, yeah, exactly.
Did he throw a strike?
Oh, he threw a strike, and I believe it was, what, 85 to 90 miles an hour. What is wrong with this pitcher?
He's wearing a Nationals jacket and a White Sox hat.
But if you're a diehard White Sox fan and you have to pitch for the Nationals and you have to wear their shirt, would it be okay to wear the hat?
I guess.
I'll pick for you. It's fine.
Okay.
Quit staring at my sweater cape.
What is this?
It's fashion.
I like it.
I love it.
I just wondering
It's
what
one of a kind.
Okay.
It's not a poncho because it has a hoodie on the back. It's a sweater cape.
Okay,
Let's
I
get back
like
to
it.
baseball. Earlier I told you that story about Geraldo Gutfield. That was actually fake news. I apologize. That was not true. All those sources came from CNN. I apologize. But everything else on this board was 100% true.
All right. From now on, you have to call that a pootie, which is half a poncho, half a hoodie, a pootie.
Sweater cape. I'm like a superhero.
You are. It's a strange thing. By the way, that killed 50 Cent's career.
Yeah, you lost all the street cred.
Yeah, once you did. So why do you
bust caps? You can't throw a strike, bro.
What's wrong with you saying I'm not going to do it?
He had to do it. Just like he needs to do it. It's part of America. It's a great honor.
I
It's a
disagree.
tradition.
Why do you disagree?
I think this is great for President Trump's brand of him being too busy. I'm
Yes.
really surprised. I haven't seen it. Thank you. I'm very surprised. I have not seen a tweet from him yet saying Obama, blah, 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 was, playing all this golf. I can't fill out the first pitch because I'm too busy making America great again.
Yes.
He played golf 13 times.
Hey.
He has played a lot of golf.
He played a
This is
lot
why
of golf.
He needs this.
He spends 3
Yeah.
days a week in
Why do you
Florida.
need
Like,
this?
No, we
Throw
only.
the pitch.
You have to understand, we only cover Obama playing golf here.
Oh,
Get it
I'm
right.
sorry.
Jamie, thoughts? Do you think Trump should chuck the ball, as they say in baseball?
They don't say that at all.
I know they
That's
don't.
a complete lie.
First of all, I love the sweater that you were wearing.
And you have one now, sir.
I feel like it answers a lot of problems I have with sweaters. You ever been like, oh man, my nipples get so cold, but my forearms are so hot?
I'm not a sleeve guy. I'm not a sleeve guy.
That's the answer. And I believe Trump said he would have thrown out the first pitch if it was a much smaller ball and he could have hit it with a golf club.
That's funny.
I did read that.
PJ?
Also, it's a finger thing, isn't it?
Yeah, really? Oh,
The whole world will be looking at his finger.
Yes. But you know what? He's an athlete. Did he? He played baseball, didn't he?
He's thrown before.
Yeah. He's busy. He's busy.
Busy. No,
Yeah.
We'll go with busy.
Yeah, we'll go with busy for now.
Yeah.
All right.
It's a clean sweep tonight for Kim Jong-un. North Korea's dangerous young leader has gotten the body of his murdered half-brother Kim Jong-nam. The Malaysian government has released the body to the North Koreans and has released 3 North Koreans wanted for questioning in the murder. They'd been hiding in the North Korean embassy in Kuala Lumpur. The 3 men, believed to be filmed here on a plane. One stares down a journalist who approaches him.
Do you take part in the assassination of the Kim Jong-un? No?
At the same time, Malaysia got back 9 of its citizens who had been stuck in North Korea during this diplomatic standoff. The Malaysians insist that the 3 North Koreans were not traded for 9 hostages.
We are finished with them. So that's why we allow them to go.
Analysts dispute that.
Of course there was a deal. It's absolutely died. I think just the Malaysians just rolled over and just gave everything that the North Koreans wanted.
The most shocking thing about this is the fact that Kim Jong-un is getting away with murder.
Malaysian and South Korean officials say Kim Jong-un ordered the hit on his half-brother, who they say was smeared with a banned chemical weapon, VX nerve agent, in the middle of Kuala Lumpur's airport. Kim's regime vehemently denies involvement, but experts say the North Koreans have pulled off several aggressive moves like this over decades with virtually no payback.
Conducted multiple assassination attempts against South Korean leaders, assassinated First Lady of South Korea, blew up Korean civilian airliner, killing 115 people on board. In 2010, North Korea sunk a South Korean vessel, Cheonan, killing all 46 South Korean sailors. And always, every single time North Korea has gotten away with these things.
Tonight, Kim seems to feel emboldened. A U.S. defense official telling CNN, in recent days, the U.S. has observed a lot of activity at a North Korean research facility tied to its development of long-range missiles that could someday strike America. Analysts say expect Kim to ramp up his aggression.
We will likely see a continuation of missile tests. We will likely see also very soon, possibly, according to recent satellite imagery, another nuclear test.
The only people who are being held accountable for the murder of Kim Jong-nam, these two women, one Vietnamese, one Indonesian, who Malaysian officials say smeared the VX nerve agent in his face at the airport. They're charged with murder. They both deny it, claiming they thought they were taking part in a TV stunt. But tonight, they both face death by hanging for this crime.
Blasting Vladimir Putin in his own backyard, President Trump's top diplomat and Pentagon chief blamed Russian aggression for turning the idea of a reset with Moscow into a pipe dream.
From what happened with Crimea to other aspects of their behavior in mucking around inside other people's elections.
Visiting NATO for the first time, Secretary of State Rex Tillerson tried to reassure nervous European allies that President Trump won't seek closer ties with Russia.
We want to obviously have a discussion around NATO's posture here in Europe, most particularly Eastern Europe, in response to Russia's aggression in Ukraine and elsewhere.
On Thursday, former FBI agent Clint Watts told lawmakers investigating Russia that Putin may be trying to hide his tracks.
Follow the trail of dead Russians. There's been more dead Russians in the past 3 months that are tied to this investigation, who have assets in banks all over the world.
Last week, exiled Russian lawmaker Denis Vorenkov was gunned down in broad daylight outside a hotel in Kiev. The former security minister has shared closely guarded state secrets about Russian actions in Ukraine with investigators. Ukraine's president calls his murder, quote, an act of Russian state terrorism. And he's just one of several mysterious Russian deaths since Russia became a target of investigation for meddling in the U.S. election. In December, Russia's ambassador to Turkey was shot dead at point-blank range at an art exhibition. The shooter, a Turkish police officer, shouted, "Do not forget Syria," as he pulled the trigger. The same day, Peter Polishchukov, a senior Russian diplomat, found shot in the head in the bedroom of his Moscow home. And November 8th, U.S. Election Day. New York police were called to the Russian consulate to find diplomat Sergei Krivov unconscious. He was pronounced dead on the scene. Russian officials changed their story of how he died 3 times, from falling from the roof to a heart attack, before an autopsy said he died of a tumor. In all, 8 prominent Russians found dead since the U.S. election, 5 of them diplomats, including Ambassador to the UN Vitaly Churkin, who died suddenly of a heart attack last month.
So, Jesse, I mean, it's fascinating to read over these documents and the reporting that the New York Times has now posted tonight. There's so much, for all the talk of how, Jared Kushner and Ivanka Trump have gone above and beyond the law in terms of getting rid of any ethical conflicts. There's a lot that's just not known about who Jared Kushner's family company, who's investing in it, what businesses from overseas are investing in it. You talked about a huge investment from a company in Israel, and obviously he's tasked with bringing Middle East peace.
Right. I mean, Kushner Companies has 4 separate loans from Bank Hapoalim, which is the biggest bank in Israel, and that presents a couple of issues, right? One, Jared Kushner is, as you point out, tasked with doing peace in the Middle East. And then the other issue is that Bank Hapoalim is the subject of a very serious investigation by the Department of Justice here in the U.S. into whether the bank helped Americans evade taxes with undeclared bank accounts offshore. And so the notion that he continues to be the beneficiary of this business that he ran for many years, that is in business with the biggest bank in a country with whom he's going to be doing extensive work from a diplomatic perspective, is quite surprising.
The finances of the president's closest aides, including his daughter, have just been revealed in the White House disclosure documents. We're now learning that Ivanka Trump and her husband, Jared Kushner, combined, their worth could exceed $700 million. Now, the couple collected about $195 million in income. This is according to a new financial snapshot of about 180 of the men and women serving in the Donald Trump White House. Before administration counsel advised them to resign from various postings, divest certain holdings, or recuse themselves from future decisions. CNN Politics producer Dan Merica is with us this morning. Dan, good morning to you.
Morning.
So let's start with Ivanka Trump and Jared Kushner. I mean, they are not the only wealthy aides, but we are learning a lot about their holdings as well as the other aides there in the White House, and there are a lot of millionaires around the president.
Yeah, the form somewhat, confirmed what we already thought and knew about this White House. Is there are a lot of wealthy people around Donald Trump. You remember he campaigned against people who, and Goldman Sachs and investment banks, but it's worth noting a lot of those people have come to the White House, come to his administration. You have people like Gary Cohn, his top economic advisor, made $75 million last year. Dina Powell, who was a top National Security Council advisor, made over $4 million last year, $3 million of which was in a cash bonus. But by far the most interesting is what Jared Kushner and by marriage Ivanka Trump, what they're worth and what they made. The $700 million is a huge figure, but if you dig down into those numbers, you see where that money came from and what must have been a very complicated process to divest himself from all of these holdings. Now, the biggest concern with the Trump administration has been the ability for aides and the president himself to benefit their businesses and then their bottom line through the presidency. You've seen Donald Trump for the last 8 weekends go to properties with his name on it, go to golf courses, go to his hotels, and now obviously he's the president, he can go where he wants, but by going to those properties, he's giving them publicity that many places would die for, and that in turn benefits his bottom line. The questions about Kushner and now Ivanka Trump, who has become an informal advisor or an official advisor, a government employee, is will she be able to do that as well, and how are her holdings tied to her husband's?
I'm joined now by Newt Gingrich, former Speaker of the House and a Fox News contributor. Speaker, thanks for joining us this morning.
Glad to be with you.
So let's get to that first. The president has taken to Twitter on this, and he has called all of this a total scam as this controversy continues. Is that something you agree with?
Oh, I think in terms of the whole question of the Trump administration, it's an absurd story, but I think it raises two other questions. One is, was the Obama White House deliberately leaking, which would be a felony? Who was doing it? I mean, these are crimes. And I think that's a key part of this. And the other is, I think we should know what the Russians have been up to, but frankly, that involves the Podesta brothers, one of whom is a registered agent for a Russian bank. It involves all the different things that Peter Schweitzer wrote about in his book on Clinton Cash. And it's ironic that all of the real evidence of real money and real influence buying by the Russians relates to Democrats. There's no evidence that anybody was particularly being purchased on the Republican side, yet the committees, for reasons beyond my understanding, are narrowly defining what this investigation is about. It should be about the degree to which the U.S. is penetrated by efforts to corrupt our society and to purchase influence.
Yeah, and you've heard that time and time again during those White House press briefings this week from Sean Spicer. He keeps saying that the media is obsessed with the process and not the substance here. That continues to be the White House narrative. But I want to show you exactly what he wrote in this tweet, the president. He said, "It is the same fake news media that said there is, quote, no path to victory for Trump. That is now pushing the phony Russia story, a total scam." Why do you think that the media is in such a frenzy over this?
Oh, no, they're not, I don't think they're actually in a frenzy over this. I think they're in a frenzy. And this is the latest manifestation of that frenzy. It's a little bit like the Time correspondent who couldn't find Martin Luther King's statue because apparently a Secret Service agent was standing in front of it, and so promptly, without checking with anybody, sent out a note that Trump had taken Martin Luther King's statue or bust out of the Oval Office, which was repeated by 3,000 different sources, according to Kellyanne Conway. I think what you have is a left-wing media, starting with the Times, New York Times, and Washington Post, and the big networks. They are so far to the left. They are in a frenzy over Trump having won. This is just the latest manifestation. But you're going to see them stay this way, I think, all the way through. They are so frightened that their world is going to be taken apart, which it is. They're watching deregulation. They're watching a conservative Supreme Court justice. They're watching a president who's not afraid to take them on. And I think it just increases the panic and the frenzy of the news media.
Speaker, the intelligence community has concluded that Russia did indeed meddle in the 2016 election. The discrepancy here and the conspiracy theories that are out there and the speculation out there from the mainstream media, you'll see, is that Donald Trump was involved in that and his campaign was involved in that and colluded with them somehow on the election. There's absolutely no proof of that, we know. But is it reasonable to say at this point, Speaker, that there are a lot of outstanding questions surrounding this and these investigations are certainly needed?
Look, the Russians believe in a model that we're going to have to figure out how to deal with called hybrid warfare. And that model includes intelligence operations, it includes information operations, it includes bribing people. It's a whole range of things. They're doing it right now in Ukraine. They've done it in some of the Baltic states. And they do it here and they do it in Europe. And we're going to have to figure out how to do it. That's why I said I'd feel much better if the intelligence committees took a deep breath, stood back and said, we're going to look at everything involving Russian efforts, and there are other countries that do this, but Russia's the biggest one, to subvert American society. And you know, President Obama himself said last year, of course they're doing it. They always try to do it. They did it back in the Soviet days, and he shrugged it off. So there's no question the Russians have information operations. They have spending large amounts of money. They have a variety of things going on, none of which particularly related to Donald Trump, and frankly, in the past may have helped Democrats far more than Republicans. But we, the American people, deserve to have the Congress get to the bottom across the whole issue of efforts by Russia to influence and undermine American life.
Do you think that an independent investigation is needed, or should the Senate take the lead on this?
You know, former Attorney General McCasey did a great job the other day on another network when they kept talking about independent counsel. He said, show me the crime. I mean, there is no crime here. I don't know what the crime would be. And there's zero question about any kind of crime by the Trump people. I think that the more you look at this, the more you realize this is hysteria in the news media. By the way, deliberately ignoring Director of National Intelligence Clapper when he says there was no collusion, deliberately ignoring James Comey when he says there was no collusion. I mean, we've had pretty definitive statements that nobody in the Trump campaign colluded with the Russians.
Let's talk about Michael Flynn. This is Trump's former national security advisor. He was fired from the administration for not disclosing conversations with at least one Russian official. He is now asking for immunity in exchange for testifying on these Russian probes. President Trump backed his request this week, saying he should ask for immunity. This is a witch hunt. Do you agree with that?
Absolutely. Look, I watched an independent counsel destroy the reputation of Scooter Libby when he was Dick Cheney's chief of staff. The independent counsel knew that the person he was looking for was, in fact, in the State Department, knew exactly who it was, told the person to keep their mouth shut, and went after Scooter in an effort to intimidate him into destroying Cheney. In the process, that independent counsel locked up a New York Times reporter for 85 days to force her to give what she has said in a book since then was false testimony. Now, I would say that my advice as a non-lawyer to somebody like Flynn or anybody in the Trump White House is if you don't get a grant of immunity, don't say a word. Plead the fifth on every single thing, because you're going to run the risk that the House committee, the Senate committee, the FBI are all going to look at your testimony. Then they're going to look at other people's testimony. Then they could come back, not because you did anything wrong, but because you either misremembered something, which they'll characterize as perjury, you failed to remember a certain document, which they'll characterize as obstruction of justice. This is not a game. People's lives have been destroyed by these kind of antics, and I think in his own self-interest that General Flynn, who has served this country well, has won 4 bronze medals in combat, for Pete's sake. You know, he's being attacked by people who don't have a clue what it's like to defend America. And I think he should absolutely demand that he get immunity before he say a word.
And Devin Nunes, a popular conversation this week on the left is that he should step down, that it's not possible for him to continue to conduct a fair investigation as he heads up the House Intelligence Committee for looking at those documents in the White House, disclosing the findings to the president before taking it directly to the committee. Should he excuse himself?
Look, Adam Schiff, who's his ranking Democratic member, is fully, totally partisan. This is a partisan fight, particularly in the House. And of course, if I were a Democrat, I'd say he should step down because he's effective. He's smart. He knows what he's doing. He's going to be very effective at this. And if I were Nunes, I would just ignore him and cheerfully just keep cheering.
All right. Former Speaker of the House, Newt Gingrich, thanks for joining us this morning. Good to see you, sir.
Glad to do it.
All right.
There's something that happened at the White House on Friday, and you were present for it, and it was really curious. Let me just show it. The president was supposed to sign these executive orders on trade. Take a listen.
Thank you, everybody. You're going to see some very, very strong results very, very quickly. Thank you very much.
Mr. President, today with your tweet, were you trying to tell the Justice Department to grant immunity to Michael Flynn? Were you trying to do that, Mr. President? Was that your intention, Mr. President, sir?
Thank you,
Mr. President, was that your intention, Mr. President? Was that your intention, sir?
This is a very curious moment. You see Vice President Pence at the end there go over there and try to tell him he forgot to sign the executive orders. President Trump says, you know, bring them into the other room, I'll sign them there. Is there anyone in the president's inner circle who's willing to tell him when he's making a mistake?
Well, as to the signing of the orders, he did sign the orders. I was there with him in the anteroom when he signed them, and in fact, he gave me the pen that he used to sign the order most directly relevant to the Department of Commerce. So I don't see where the term mistake comes from.
Well, it was supposed to be signed. He was supposed to sign them before the cameras. It was a ceremony, and he ended up walking out before he signed them, which I'm sure was just an honest mistake, or maybe he didn't want to answer Major Garrett's question about immunity and Michael Flynn. But in any case, it just all looked rather odd, and it also just raises the question, is there anybody who can tell the president when he's wrong?
Well, I don't see what he did that's wrong. It's his decision where he wants to sign an order. He did sign the order. It's official. That's the relevant fact. Whether it pleased some particular cameraman or not is of no concern.
So, Congressman, President Trump, as I don't need to tell you, is blaming you and two of your colleagues in the Freedom Caucus for the health care debacle. He tweeted, quote, if Representatives Mark Meadows, Jim Jordan, and Raul Labrador would get on board, we would have both great health care and massive tax cuts and reform. The president seems to be placing the blame squarely on your shoulders. Is that fair?
Jake, tweets and statements and blame don't change facts, and the facts remain the same. When you look at the document, you look at the legislation, it doesn't repeal Obamacare. Even people who support it have called it Obamacare light. Doesn't bring down premiums. Even the CBO said premiums are going to rise for the next 3.5 years. And certainly it doesn't unite Republicans, as evidenced by the fact you got conservatives and moderates who are opposed to the legislation. And it doesn't unite the country. When have you seen a bill come forward where only 17% of the country supports it? So let's do better than that. Let's start over. Let's get this thing done right. And let's keep our promises with the American people.
Dan Scavino, who is President Trump's social media director at the White House, over the weekend urged the defeat of one of your colleagues in the Freedom Caucus. He tweeted, quote, Donald Trump is bringing auto plants and jobs back to Michigan. Justin Amash, that's a Freedom Caucus member who is also a Republican from Michigan, is a big liability. Trump train, defeat him in primary. Congressman Jordan, that's the White House saying that your Freedom Caucus colleague, Justin Amash, should be primaried, should lose his job. What's your response?
Justin Amash is a good friend and one of the most principled members of Congress. And frankly, if he is primaried, I'm going to do everything I can to help him. But what concerns me more than this threat of primaries is keeping our word with the American people. And as I said, you would think even Congress should be able to put together a piece of legislation that more than 17% of our fellow citizens like. And maybe one of the things we should learn from this, Jake, is this process was deeply flawed in my judgment. Good process leads to good policy, which I think translates into good politics. That didn't happen here, again, as evidenced by the fact no one in the country likes this bill. So maybe instead of hiding the bill away, rolling it out 4 weeks ago, having hearings where there are no witnesses who actually testify, where there are no amendments allowed to be offered, no amendments accepted, maybe we need to do the process right, and maybe if we do, we'll develop a product that more than 17% of the country actually approves of. So let's do it that way. Why not actually have doctors come in and testify, maybe hospitals testify, or maybe just some regular American families who this bill is going to impact? Why not have that kind of process take place, and we'll get to a better process? And that's the kind of thing that Justin Amash and other members of the Freedom Caucus think need to happen.